Evening. Proverbs 26. Honor is no more associated with fools than snow with summer or rain with harvest. Like a fluttering sparrow or a darting swallow, an undeserved curse will not land on its intended victim. Guide a horse with a whip, a donkey with a bridle, and a fool with a rod to his back. Don't answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you will become as foolish as they are. Followed by, be sure to answer the foolish arguments of fools, or they will become wise in their own estimation. Trusting a fool to convey a message is like cutting off one's feet or drinking poison. A proverb in the mouth of a fool is as useless as a paralyzed leg. Honoring a fool is as foolish as tying a stone to a slingshot. A proverb in the mouth of a fool is like a thorny branch brandished by a drunk. An employer who hires a fool or a bystander is like an archer who shoots at random. As a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats his foolishness. There is more hope for fools than for people who think they are wise. The lazy person claims there's line in the road. Yes, I'm sure there's line out there. As a door swings back and forth on its hinges, so a lazy person turns over in bed. Lazy people take food in their hand but don't even lift it to their mouth. Lazy people consider themselves smarter than 7 wise counselors. Interfering with someone else's argument is as foolish as yanking a dog's ears. Just as damaging as a madman shooting a deadly weapon is someone who lies to a friend and then says, "I was only joking." Fire goes out without wood and quarrels disappear when gossip stops. A quarrelsome person starts fights as easily as hot embers light charcoal or fire lights wood. Rumors are dainty morsels that sink deep into one's heart. Smooth words may hide a wicked heart just as pretty glaze covers a clay pot. People may cover their hatred with pleasant words, but they're deceiving you. They pretend to be kind, but don't believe them. Their hearts are full of many evils. While their hatred may be concealed by trickery, their wrongdoings will be exposed in public. If you set a trap for others, you will get caught in it yourself. If you roll a boulder down on others, it will crush you instead. A lying tongue hates its victims, and flattering words cause ruin. So a lot of these kind of sound like repeats from some of the ones that we've read before. And again, I think that that's on purpose. It's repetitions that the lesson sticks, right? I think on average somebody has to hear something 6 times before it finally kicks in and sticks. Let's see, like a fluttering sparrow or a darting swallow, an undeserved curse will not land on its victim. There's actually a pretty funny witness to this. Back in the Old Testament, Balaam, the guy who had the talking donkey, right? Or where the donkey talked to him to save him from getting slaughtered by an angel that was standing on the road that he couldn't see, but the donkey could. Was, I guess, for lack of a better term, a freelance prophet. What I mean by that is he did not exclusively follow one God or the God of Israel, right? But he was more of a medium that would speak to supernatural beings and be able to interpret what they said and tell that to kings and stuff like that. And a king hired him and said, "Hey, you're going to pronounce a curse on the Israelites because I don't like them and they suck." And Balaam said, "Okay, I'll do it." So he took the money and he went out to go curse the Israelites. And every time he tried to curse them, he physically couldn't. He'd be like, "Hey, I'm going to curse it," when the king would say, "Okay, cool, do it." And he would open his mouth and the Holy Spirit would come on him instead of another spirit, right? Because that's a thing. And the Holy Spirit would make him instead pronounce curses on the guy who hired him to curse Israel and bless the Israelites. And it happened 3 separate times until the king basically just gave up. And so, yeah, if somebody's not deserving of a curse, right, and you try to pronounce evil on them or anything like that, right, or be like, they're the nicest person in the world, I hope they stub their toe at 3 a.m., right, probably not going to stick, right? That being said, you shouldn't be cursing enemies anyways, because, like we read last night, you're supposed to pray for your enemies and give them, water and food and things like that. You're supposed to pray for them. Because guess what? Jesus died for them too. So, let's see. One that confused me for a while is verse 4 and 5, or verse 4, don't answer the foolish argument of fools, or you'll become as foolish as they are. And then verse 5 says, be sure to answer the foolish arguments of fools, or else they will become wise in their own estimation. So they say the same thing. One says do and one says don't. I think this is one of those times where the Bible was written intentionally to be semi kind of confusing, and not confusing as in to make you question everything, but to make you stop and think about it instead of just blindly reading through it, right? I think that sometimes the way it's written is there's some speed bumps in there that are supposed to kind of slow you down, to make you stop and think, right? And I think this is one of them. And from what I read from other places, trying to find some clarity on this, thinking and praying on it on my own, but also like reading like the margins of like a different Bible. It's got, like smart people stuff in the side of it. Basically, you don't answer foolishness with foolishness, but you answer with wisdom and grace, right? You don't answer a foolish argument with a foolish answer, right? You don't answer like the fool would want you to answer, but instead you answer in truth and with mercy and with grace. And you do that because if you answer foolishness with foolishness, then you come off as a fool, right? Oh, lovely. Back stop moved. There we go. You're not called to be a fool, right? You're called to be more than that. So you don't answer. You want to answer the foolish argument non-foolishly, if that makes sense. You want to have an answer that comes from wisdom and grace, as opposed to your own foolishness or something like that. And you want to answer the foolish arguments to an extent. You don't want to waste your time. You don't waste all day on it, right? But you do answer it and kind of leave it open. But the Bible also says in the New Testament, you don't throw your pearls before swine, right? If somebody's just never gonna, if they just want to pick an argument for the sake of argument, man, move on, right? You got better things to do. Frankly, so they should have better things to do. And if they don't, let them waste their day, but you don't have to waste yours, right? But if it's somebody who has a foolish argument, but they're legitimately trying to get the right answer, man, answer it, right? So they don't become wise in their own estimation. Kind of one that goes to that, right, is, let's see. Lazy people consider themselves smarter than 7 wise counselors, verse 16. That's why you want to answer verse 4 and 5, right? So that they don't think that they're the next big hot thing that everybody needs to follow and they've got it all figured out, because guess what? They don't. A proverb in the mouth of a fool is as useless as a paralyzed leg, right? I think what this one is that you need to understand why a proverb is a proverb and what it's trying to actually say, right, before you go around just spouting it off. Because then if somebody asks you, well, what does that actually mean, and you can't answer that, right, then you look about stupid, right? We ain't called to be stupid if you're called to Christ, right? So honoring a fool is as foolish as tying a stone to a slingshot. In other words, it completely defeats the purpose, right? The stone is meant to be slung from the slingshot. And yeah, it eliminates the problem of the stone falling out before it's supposed to come out, right? So it does solve an issue, but it solves an issue at the cost of the entire context of what it's for. So you don't honor a fool to fix a problem at the expense of the entire context of what's supposed to be fixed, right? You don't want, that's something we run into at work all the time, right? Trying to figure out some issues and stuff like that, is you don't want to trade one problem for another. You want to fix the problem. So don't trade one problem for another, or make a bigger problem by fixing one problem by honoring a fool. If that makes any sense. And boy, howdy, does that happen today. Honestly, look at any celebrity. As a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats his foolishness. Man, I think everybody's been there a little bit, where there's a certain sin that just kind of gets a hold of you that you just can't shake, and you know it's stupid, you know it's retarded, you don't need to do it, you know it's not beneficial. You know that it's the wrong thing to do, but you kind of can't help but keep doing it to an extent. And it's hard to explain why, right? Just like a dog doesn't understand that eating its own vomit is disgusting and gross. Some fools don't understand that return to the same sin again and again and again and again and again is also disgusting and gross, right? And it might be like, well, it keeps my stomach from hurting because now I got a full belly, right? Yeah, but it's full of the wrong thing. It's not anything. It doesn't have any nutrients in it, right? It's not gonna sustain you. You're doing something disgusting and gross for short-term gain, with no real long-term benefits whatsoever, right? And it's hard to explain to a fool that, hey, what you're doing is disgusting and gross. So until they stop being a fool and they realize it's disgusting and gross, they're probably going to keep doing it, right? I think most folks can relate to that one, embarrassingly enough. Right. That being said, for all this stuff about how it talks about how terrible a fool is, how terrible it is to trust a fool. Verse 12: there is more hope for fools than for people who think they're wise. Right. So if you think you're wise, going back towards a night or two ago, it was talking about don't kind of proclaim yourself among kings. Let other people do that for you, or wait for the king to call you forward. If you think you're wise, you're probably not. But if other people start calling you that, right, and it's with good reason, then maybe you can, consider it a little bit, but don't get arrogant from it, right? If you're the wisest person then then I hate to say it, you're hanging out with the wrong crowd, right? You shouldn't be the smartest man in the room. You can be an expert in the room on a certain subject, right? But if you're the smartest person in the room all the time, I'd encourage you to take a look at yourself, because you're wrong. That's how it is, right? As a door swings back and forth on its hinges, so a lazy person turns over in bed. I ain't gonna lie, I'm guilty about that, right? I like to sleep, because I never get enough of it, ever. But there comes a point where, tired or not, you got to get up and start facing the day and doing everything, right? That's one that I'm still struggling with some. Man, I'd love to sleep in, but can't. Lazy people take food in their hand but don't even lift it to their mouth. Lazy people consider themselves smarter than 7 wise counselors. Right, there are some folks out there that are so incredibly lazy that once they have the food in their hand, they think that that's enough as opposed to actually eating it, right? You might have a blessing in your hand, right? You might have exactly what you need to be able to complete a task. But if you don't actually do the task, then it doesn't matter if you have what you need to or not, right? Because the task still ain't done. Going back towards do, not say. Right, you can have the best gear in the world, you can have the best coaches in the world, you can have your own private trading facility, all this other kind of stuff, right? But ain't nobody can work out for you. Ain't nobody can learn a sport for you, right? You have to do it. Having the correct equipment and everything like that is nice, right? Having your food in your hand is nice, but until you actually eat it, it ain't doing anything to sustain you. You gotta actually do stuff. Lazy people consider themselves smarter than 7 wise counselors, right? Again, don't be arrogant and don't be conceited. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're wrong. See, interfering in someone else's argument is as foolish as yanking a dog's ears. Some folks, especially kids, right, they'll go up and they'll kind of pick on the dog a little bit, yanking ears or whatever it is, right, trying to pet it or whatever, getting too rough with it. And then that dog will kind of, won't bite them, but it'll kind of snap at them, and the kid starts crying. And it's like, well, no offense, but what'd you expect, right? If you go around causing pain for no reason, on something that you think you can bully, then don't be surprised whenever it snaps back and gets you, right? Don't interfere in somebody else's argument. That's theirs. All right, let them own it, especially if it's one they got themselves into. Now, you can offer support to friends and everything like that, right? And it doesn't mean to be a pushover, right? Somebody says something to my wife, and then guess what? I got words for them too. Maybe more than that. Who knows? Pick a parking lot. That being said, I ain't gonna get myself involved, and I try not to get myself involved in too many other people's arguments, right? Stuff comes up at work sometimes, and it's like, oh, this person, that person, this person, or whatever it is, and I'll just sit there like, yep, that's how it goes. I'll just let them think what they think, right? Folks are adults; they can have their own opinions. I'm apt to let them have it. If it don't benefit me for one person to win over the other, and I ain't gonna get involved in it, right? And even if it does benefit me, most of the time I'll still try to stay out of it, just because. No thanks, right? Blessed are those who are the peacemakers. I think those verses go together pretty well. That being said, fire goes out without wood and quarrels disappear when gossip stops. If you want to stop fighting, stop talking about it. It's really as simple as that, right? And they might keep bringing it up, but if they keep bringing it up, nobody's listening to them or bouncing it back to them, they'll drop it eventually. There's some stuff in here about smooth words may hide a wicked heart. People cover their hatred with pleasant words, right? They pretend to be kind but don't believe them. If their wrongdoings will be exposed in public, you got to be careful who you trust and what you trust them with, right? And I'm not gonna lie, I've been burned on that. There was somebody that I absolutely considered closer than a brother, and turns out there was somebody that I couldn't trust with anything. And it hurt, and I'll be honest, it still hurts. And I struggle about daily with saying that they're forgiven, but still wanting to catch them outside, right? It burns deep, man. It hurts whenever that happens. But sure enough, their wrongdoings were exposed in public. Now everybody knows what they are and who they are, and they're paying for it. So yeah, be careful who you trust. That doesn't mean that you can't have a passing acquaintance with folks, right? But as far as folks that you actually trust, it's probably going to be a small circle, right? I think that, at least for me, I probably consider myself friendly with most folks, but I really don't have too many friends, people that I would actually consider friends. And then the circle that's considered brothers is pretty small. But because once that happens to you, you don't forget it. Anyways, that's Proverbs 26. Have a happy Memorial Day, y'all.